Hey Jordan, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Neel.
You look a bit disgruntled today. You were out in the rain for a while.
I was sad out there.
Yeah.
Your bloody door doesn't open.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. It's not
it's
your
not.
fault.
Yeah, it's not really. I pay the strata, so
Yeah, actually,
don't know what
you're
happens.
getting bang for buck. Well, actually, at least
That's
one.
a good
You can
point.
go in one way, but you know what? I'm really scared for your safety if there's ever a fire. What do? You just jump out there and hope you don't break too many bones.
Yeah. I think I could survive that jump.
Me too, actually.
Well,
I think you could. You wouldn't want to, but you could survive.
For
it.
people listening and watching this, I'm only on the first level, so
Yeah.
I'm only one level above ground.
Yeah.
I could easily survive. I think I could survive that without broken bones. And the other thing here is the smoke alarms are so sensitive. I have you won't be able to see it, but I have a shower cap on my smoke alarm because it's that sensitive. Even if you put it, like toast will set it off, and then when it goes off, the whole building has an alarm.
Yeah.
And the fire department comes and it
It's
costs
your
you
fault.
like $1,000. Yeah.
Have you set it off?
No, I've never set it off, but I've been told that's how much it costs.
And that's a lesson. Go to your strata meetings, eh?
Yeah.
Learn tips.
I really should, but I don't.
Oh, you just.
I don't.
I don't know how you do. I don't know how anyone interacts in apartments. It seems like it's a community, but it's probably the furthest thing from it. Surely.
No.
Do you even know who your neighbours are?
I know the next door neighbor, but that's it. And when I say no, I know her name.
Yes.
That's
that's
it.
better than most.
Yeah.
She nice.
Yeah, she's nice. She's lovely.
Well,
I always
mean,
feel like a creep being a single guy trying to say to her, hey, do you want to get lunch or something? Do you want to hang out? Be friendlier neighbors.
fair enough.
But yeah, once I ran into her in the car park late at night, and I think I scared her a little bit. I was like, hey. And she's like, oh. Oh, hey. It was you. And from then on, I just haven't. Well, actually, I was going to give her some house plans. And I was knocking on her door, and she didn't answer about 3 times. Then I felt like a creep, so I just gave up.
Well, I mean,
The perils of being a single ethnic man. The threshold for creepiness is just way too low.
was those plans? Were you feeling guilty and you wanted to make it up to her for freaking her out?
No, I just we were talking once, and she mentioned she liked houseplants. So I was like, oh, I'll give her one.
That's so nice of you.
Yeah.
That is downright decent of you.
It was truly just good intentions.
You should just be wearing a bow tie all the time. You're like a very nice man.
Oh,
Should
I'm
just be
on the
looking, like,
outside.
nice and clean.
You know, it's the nicest people that always have the darkest underbelly.
True. Especially when they live in
thoughts.
apartments by themselves. It's
Yeah.
There's such a giveaway of someone who's plotting an assassination of a president.
Wow, you know me too well. But let's get started on this week's topic. I believe it was creativity.
As it was.
I didn't do any research this week because it's a very broad topic there.
It is. It's a rabbit hole, man. But I suppose every subject is really. I mean, I remember reading someone who studied, oh God, what was it even called now? A toad worm or something. The point is, it's a worm. One of the millions of species of worms. He was studying it for 47 years. And he was still coming up with new discoveries.
Okay.
Just goes to show.
It just goes to show that creativity, you could never fully study that as
No,
one
'cause
human
that's
being.
one- I know,
Because if you
that's
can't
one
study
area.
a tapeworm after nearly half a century,
Yeah.
what
Are you
hope
supposed
do
to
you
go
have?
into every painting anyone's ever done and just been like, I know the mechanisms of that. But actually, you know what? Big call. I think I do know the mechanisms of that.
Do you?
Ah,
So
look,
this topic was your idea, so you've been looking into it a little bit, have you?
yeah, obsessively.
Okay. What, just broad creativity or any specific kind of creativity?
Well, this is the thing. What you learn when you look at creativity from a psychological perspective, because usually I've always just been reading those books that everybody's creative. Yeah. And that's sort of true. Everybody is sort of like
What
everyone
were you
drew
reading,
a picture
like-
at school.
Kindergarten textbooks, were you?
I think so.
Everybody's creative.
Yeah, that's it. Just
What
they
is
took the
that?
pictures out as a prank.
Okay.
I don't know because it's the
Okay.
same. Like it's wrong. I mean, it's kind of true in that everyone can run, but not everyone's Usain Bolt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this is like a general theme that this podcast should just be called The Weekly Come Down with Neel and Jordan. It's just like, sorry to shatter your illusions, kids, but your life's going to be pretty shit. Anyway, come back next week where we'll convince you more of that. But it seems that if you go into creativity, that look, everybody can come up with creative ideas.
Yeah.
But if you give out a list, the common test that they always use in creativity to see if somebody's creative or not is they'll give somebody something very simple like, here's a nail. Come up with as many things that a nail could be used for in 3 minutes.
Right, so it's like an improv game.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's like, whose line is it anyway?
Well, I've never watched the show, but I'll just assume that that's what
They give them a chair and they have to come up with as many possible scenes involving the chair, but not using it as a chair. So you use it as a... My mind immediately went to like a missile launcher for some reason.
Did you play that as a kid?
That's the nice guy in me. Like, oh yeah, it's the fucking violent streak coming out. I did. I played that as a teenager. Yeah. That's why I wasn't getting laid. I was, I was playing improv games.
But don't you think that improv works later on in life? If while you're doing it, you don't get laid, but afterwards, it helps you get laid.
How so? Just the
Because
skills.
it's just like being able to adapt to new situations quickly.
I've seen a lot of guys that do improv, and I don't picture them as the guys who get laid.
I 100% agree with you on that point. But if they forgot that and got a skill that was useful, like being a plumber or some shit, but they had the thing of being that, it'd get about a tight spot.
I wonder if there's any cross-section between people who are plumbers and people who do improv classes.
You know what I'm going to bet?
A very repressed plumber.
Yeah, I really don't think that there's a single person that would cross over on that. But prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. The thing is...
But there's okay, so the nail, they had to come up with as many things they can do with the nail in 3 minutes.
Yes, and a lot of people will just come up with the same things of, you can use it to put wood together, you could use it to stab someone. They'll come up with those kind of answers. But if you come up with answers that are just like, you can use it to pop balloons, to make kids angry and stuff like that, and you come up with a bunch of those answers, you're going to be more creative. But the other thing that also has to be applicable to
why is that? So is it the addition of not just the practical use for it, but what you can actually do with that practical use? So not just popping the balloon, but popping the balloon to make kids angry. Is that where the extra creativity comes from? Because
it's probably not the best.
Like popping a balloon doesn't seem that
and that's
creative.
Where my mind is. Your mind is like a terrorist attack, and my mind is like making kids' life sad. But like, it is actually really... That's something else that I've been learning about creativity. It's the mind of a comic. A comic is kind of just an anti-artist in that an artist kind of wants to destroy what is there and build something better, but comics just want to just like, ruin it and then move on.
I agree with that.
Don't you?
Yeah, very cynical people.
So they're half creative, but anyway, the thing is that it's just about...
They don't create, they destroy.
That's it.
They take down.
They do the half. They do the easy
The best
part.
comedy is taking someone down, or this person destroys this person.
Yeah, it's just being mean.
Yeah, essentially.
But yeah. So anyway, like, the creative part of it is that if you are able to come up with answers that you can actually use that are applicable, that you could actually use a nail for that, but other people wouldn't think of that.
Yep.
That makes you creative. Because you're coming up with an idea that most people wouldn't come up with.
Sure.
So there's so when you look into the psychology of intelligence, apparently, when you always just hear that they're the dancing creativity and there's a I don't know, like a math creativity, and apparently that's not true at all. Apparently it's so much more sobering than that. If you're smart, you're just going to be good at everything. And if you're not, you're not. Sorry, kids. Wow. The only exception to that is if you're creative.
Okay.
You can be stupid and creative. It's rarer. Usually people that are much smarter are also going to be creative, but there's also smart people that just aren't creative.
So how do you explain the people in school that just dominate the humanities and are terrible at maths and science?
Like me. That was me. But the thing is, I think you just
didn't have that Asian discipline.
Didn't have the Asian discipline. Oh, for
That's
sure.
what it comes down to, I think.
And also, I think that on top of that, I don't think that you're very smart if you can read a history book. Sorry. It just means you can read. I think it's much more intelligent
Right.
if you're able to do things like chemistry and physics. Clearly, that's where the smart people are.
Sure.
Like,
But I mean, there are other creative aspects of the humanities, writing stories, and
yeah.
an analysis of a text would take some level of creativity.
Well, that's the overlap in that you can be intelligent and you can be creative, but you can also be dumb and creative. But just because you're intelligent doesn't mean it's one of those. If all quarks are quarks, but the only exception in intelligence is creative intelligence. Apparently, this is what the new literature is saying. And so, as a result of that, I started looking at the statistics, and man, just like we was
Okay, so that's different. So creative intelligence can be independent to, because you said before, if you're smart at one aspect of intelligence, then you're just good at everything. But so creative intelligence is completely independent of that. Is that what you're saying?
It's not completely independent. There is overlap.
Yep.
As in,
But it's less.
if you're going to have an IQ of 70, it's probably very unlikely that you're going to make the Mona Lisa.
Sure.
But you can be stupid and creative.
Okay.
That is possible.
Okay.
And I know many of those people.
That explains a lot of musicians.
Doesn't it? It does, man.
Yeah.
And don't you think that when you speak to musicians, they actually say things all the time? I mean, I like talking to comedians, but I like talking to them more philosophically, I guess, because they just think all the time. So they actually are constantly coming up with new connections and ideas. That's basically what their job is. But I think that because musicians are very good at tonality and timing and vibing and all those kind of things, actually, I think that they are very funny people. And their brain just kind of works. Because also, if you think about it, music is definitely the most creative of the fields because you're just creating something from nothing. Like, it's a sound. It doesn't exist in the real world. When you're a painter or something, you can, even like abstract painting, you're still starting from a table or something, and then you're making it weird. But with a sound, it's kind of just born from nowhere.
Coming from, yeah. Okay. Interesting.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So it's very interesting to think about this. And so I think, honestly, like everybody's job would be a lot better. They would be able to do their job a lot better if they were more creative. So that's what I've just been obsessed with for the last few weeks is how do you become more creative? Because it is like running. You can do track and field and you can get better at it. Some people are just going to be naturally better than you. But the thing is, you can get better at it. And I think that's an improvement on everybody's world if they can. Because there's two things that they come up with constantly. First of all, usually people that are creative live tragic lives. Because, man,
That's something I want to,
What?
go into a bit more. Well, the idea of the tortured artist.
Oh, yeah!
What do you think? What do you think about that? Because I have a stand-up joke about that, where I say I could never truly be a great comedian because I'm not depressed enough.
You're a pretty chill guy, I've got to
Yeah,
say.
I'm just my life is just too. I'm in control of my life. All the great artists have something fucked up going on, you know. Even just the comedians, look at Louis C.K. He has to masturbate in front of girls. Like I don't have nothing
it's
like
part
that has
of it.
happened.
Hey, you know what, dude? You're like, I mean,
That's why I need my parents to abuse me just before it's too late. Just to give me some of that darkness, you know.
have you said that in front of your parents when they go to the show, or do you just go, yeah, I just won't say that one?
No, I've said that. I've said that. Yep.
Well, dude, at least you've got the dedication to the art, man. That's like, I don't know if I could do that. It's
take
pretty
it.
raw. Yeah, look, I agree with that, and also I do think that is an indicator. You know, when people always just go that like, I don't know if I can listen to Michael Jackson ever again. This is getting into some shaky territory, but dude, I could listen to him easily.
Oh yeah.
He made Thriller, dude. It doesn't matter if he. I mean, yeah, okay. It matters that he touched kids, I guess, on a legal term and like a world of moral decency. But the thing is that you will see this link with every great artist in history, which is that, dude, they were pretty personally fucked up.
Yeah.
And it's because their mind just worked in a completely different realm.
Yeah.
It's like the first thing when you look at Michael Jackson, the first thing you think is that guy's not normal. And it's kind of the same with Louis C.K., don't you think? That when you see him and then you just heard that like he masturbates in front of chicks, it's just like, yeah, but dude, he's an artiste. Like, I understand that in the moral realm of things, that's a bad thing.
Sure.
But the thing is that like creativity, this is what I don't think society understands, is that like you can't have your Da Vinci's if you don't have your Jack the Rippers. Because someone like Jack the Ripper was kind of channeling creativity in his art of brutally murdering women or
Sure,
whatever.
yeah.
They're still accessing the same part of the brain.
Yeah.
And so usually when you are really creative, your brain goes to dark places and starts acting out on dark places as well. It's this weird. That's what's very fascinating about the energy of creativity. Is like you can do great things, but terrible things.
That's very fascinating because I've personally found that stereotype of the tortured artist actually almost frustrating in a way. Because don't you think that in comedy there are some people who are just, they have a drug problem or they have their alcohol issues, and as a result people automatically assume, oh, they're such an artist, their art is great because they're so tortured. Not every tortured person is as a result
Yes.
going to be a good artist. And that is so frightening because you see that so much now. Like someone who's just a complete, like he clearly doesn't have their life in control, and they produce something, and everyone's like, it's I don't understand it, but it must be good because clearly they're tortured. So
I'm so glad.
99% of tortured people are just tortured people. They're not all
Probably
great
more.
artists.
I know.
Definitely more, actually.
It's so I look, because we move in the same worlds. You see that all the time, and honestly, I would prefer a comedian that has a work ethic that isn't as creative, and also on top of that,
I mean, it becomes an excuse because they're like, I don't need to fix myself up because I'm an artist, man. It's just what I do.
yes,
I just do drugs.
it's ridiculous because how is that creative in the first plot? And also, the other thing is, I don't think that drug taking necessitates you being a tortured soul. That just means you're an addict, dude. Like, what you are doing, if anything, is channeling creativity into just like because the thing is, all right, if you smoke marijuana and I think George Carlin was saying this, right? That if you're a chronic stoner, you actually don't make good art because your brain is just constantly in that realm. On top of that, it saps you of any motivation and drive, which is part of the tortured artist construct. You actually have to feel those emotions and channel it into your art. You can't just be like, oh, this is too much for me.
You can't escape from it.
Dog. Huh?
You can't escape from it.
Can't escape from it.
No.
That's it. And drugs is an escape out. But the other thing that he was saying is every 6 months or so he'd take one joint and then he'd re-look at his work. And because it makes your brain think differently, he comes up with different connections.
Sure.
So look, there's arguments for and against drug taking being part of it. But honestly, I think that the tortured artist is more of just a state of being. It's somebody who, because man, the most creative people that I've met in my life, so much more talented than you or I. I think that we just hit that nice little sweet spot of being like, just entrepreneurial enough, just willing enough to take risks, but also understand that deodorant's probably a good idea, Like, but there's
The
people
amount of
that-
times I've wished I was more tortured. I'm like, damn this great work ethic. Damn this discipline. I'll never be a great artist.
But the thing is, you are an artist. That's the difference, right? Like, just
Yeah.
because you're a creative person, I mean, I guess you can say that you're an artist because you made something. That's another argument. But to be paid and be an artist, it's very, very, very rare that somebody who is actually legitimately a creative genius is able to make a living out of it. I know a lot of creative people because I went to a performing arts school, and most of them are basket cases now. One of them I know for a fact doesn't put on his pants. He gets his girlfriend to do that. He's out of this world.
How do you decide that these people are creative?
Because when you're talking to them, they just think you know how there's some people that you just hear them talk and you go, how did their mind go there?
Yeah, okay.
And it kind of makes sense, but there's always a very good example that I always use is now I can't even remember his name, but he used to do the Late Late Show. The Scottish guy. Craig Ferguson.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's clearly a tortured man if you go look at his past. He dabbled in drugs a lot, which is another thing that a lot of creative people do, again, because it's just trying to silence the voices, I guess. And this is the other thing about creativity. A lot of it is failure. And that's the other thing that's good about creative people. They're not scared of failure, which I think just naturally transposes into the rest of their worlds in general. because they understand that to create something great, you know, you got to make a lot of fuck ups. It's Thomas Edison's line of, you know, genius is 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. It's just a lot of making a lot of accidents, and then you make something great.
So creativity is the ability to think in a way that hasn't existed before. Is that
Sort of, yeah.
okay?
No boundaries.
Sure.
The more boundaries you have, so for instance, a lawyer is going to be normally the exact opposite of a creative
because
person.
they're restricted by
and they're taught to be restricted.
The aim of their court case.
Yeah.
And the language that they need to use.
Yeah.
Whereas the creative person,
yeah, they're
it's
free,
just
man.
abstract. Yeah.
Which is another reason why a lot of them are homeless and are kind of cool with being homeless. They just live on a different plane to most people.
Okay. So then, how do you define the creative geniuses that were successful? So your Michael Jacksons and the painters of the 20th century.
Michael Jackson was kind of just beaten into being successful. If he was just left to his own devices, he would just be on the side street just busking, being like, "Oh," for sure. But it was just his dad was extremely abusive and worked him like a little road horse, and he got lucky.
And what was it about Michael compared to all the other kids that get unfortunately beaten by their dads that don't become creative geniuses?
Well, no one knows.
Yeah.
No one knows what happens, but there's something in some people's brains that make them see the world very different. And the thing is, when you look at Michael Jackson's music, really, who hates it?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Now people might.
Yeah, but I think that even they're just saying it because they're not creative people and they don't understand that, you know, you gotta accept the whole package when it comes to that. They're just saying it because they heard somebody in the media just be like, "He's bad," and then they're just like, "Gah."
So you don't think that the art is separate from the artist? You think it is just a whole package, but we don't need to. We don't need to exclude certain art if it's created by someone who has done morally questionable things.
No. Well, you can't, because that you would be excluding most of the great art in history.
Yeah.
Same thing with Picasso. He was an awful man.
But is the art separate to the artist? Can you take Thriller and just be like, yeah, this is a good song? Or does the context always have to involve the artists themselves?
Well, do you think? I don't. I'm perfectly happy with accepting that human beings are multifaceted.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you there. But I also think you can have a judgment about art without taking into account the person who created it.
Exactly. I reckon that's it. Honestly, I think that if you're not doing that, you really just haven't thought it through.
Yeah.
Again, I just go back to that point though. What do you expect these people... If you're living outside the boundaries of society, which is what creatives do, they're always on that preface... That's why they always move into ghetto suburbs. And then they make them cool, and then yuppies move in, and hipsters move in, and then they're just like, oh, this scene's dead. And then they go to somewhere else. And they're always kind of borderline homeless, sometimes they actually are. And they just live in that world of mess, and they're organizing it in a way that's kind of beautiful in a way.
Yeah.
That's kind of the artist's job, I guess, is kind of making people see things in a different way. And so by very definition of that, if you're making people see things in a different way, it's that thing of just like, you are what your thoughts are, essentially, at the end of the day. Like if you say normally, I didn't realize this, apparently, if you say, for instance, you know, I'm a late person, it's very, very likely that you're not just saying it. It's just you've observed that pattern and you just say it. And so as a result of that, whenever somebody ever says anything or what their actions are, that is habitual. Like 95% of what you do is habit. But if their habit is being crazy and weird all the time, they're going to do crazy, weird shit. And so like, I don't know what the answer is when it comes to all these creatives, because it's really sad, actually, when I see a lot of these people that I know, that I just know there is no one in the world like you, and it would be good if the world saw more of you and saw the way that you think. But
They
they
need to put on pants.
That'd be a start. Yeah. Instead of like,
but that's
what is
taking
it,
away the creativity.
But that's another thing about creatives. We see it all the time. They are very childlike. They're basically kids because when you're a kid, again, you're just less restricted.
And do you think environment plays a bigger part in creating this creative gene? Do you think it is a gene, or do you think it's comes about through environmental factors?
No, I think that, well, yes. Obviously, if you're a Hollywood producer, then you're just gonna have a kid that's in one of those bands that has like 2 songs or whatever. But so obviously, there's some environmental factor if they're all going to be a creative or not, or there can be at least. But in general, I think that this is actually just an inbuilt thing. Just like some people are born extremely smart and some people are born stupid. Some people are born very creative and some people are born aren't. I don't think that that's an excuse for you to not work on it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the reality, that you can only push it so far. I still think that you should work on it though.
Yeah, interesting.
Because with your stand-up, do you do this activity all the time? I do it all the time. If there's a sentence that doesn't work, I just naturally did that test. If there's a sentence that doesn't work, I just write 20 other sentences. And usually I won't even get to the 20th sentence. I'll get to like the 7th sentence or something, and I'll be like, that's a better sentence than the sentence that I have. And now that I know that that's a thing that you can use as a tool to make you more creative.
Sure.
It's just kind of scatterbrain.
No, that's not a process I would go through. I go through the individual words more than the actual... I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't replace an entire sentence usually.
Yeah?
No, I don't think so.
Well, I've never even thought about that. It might actually work better. I don't know. But it's that same thing of...
So for me, it's all about the refinement. It's about, this is the thought that I'm trying to get across. How do I refine every little word in this stand-up bit to get that point across as effectively as possible?
Well, yeah, it's the same thing. It's that... I think... It's a thing that most people just don't... Like when people say I'm not creative, they can't... Maybe
to be honest, I don't think so. I'll let you... I don't think that's the creative part. I think the creative part is the actual thought itself, upon which the words then come from that. So the thought that goes into the stand-up, so what is it that you are trying to say? That's the creative bit. Then the words are almost an after effect of that. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, go again.
So if you have an idea about it, so for me, when I try to think of my stand, I try to think of, okay, what's a perspective? I think we agree on this with how we define good stand-up, which is presenting a perspective that hasn't been heard or seen before.
Yeah.
So that itself is that thought is the creative part. Then the words, I don't think they're as important.
Man, yeah, you are right. The words are not important.
Didn't articulate that very, but you do understand.
No, I know. I get it now.
Yeah.
But it's still part... This is what I'm saying. Everything that you do can or can't be creative. Everything. Sure. As in, you could clean the house creatively.
Yeah.
You could brush your teeth creatively. Because, habitually, you will do it exactly the same time every time. Yeah. Ever since you learned to do it when you were 5. You can do it differently. So when you're refining those words... You can still see that as part of the creative process, and you're right.
Sure, I agree, but I think the main component of creativity comes from the thought itself.
Yeah, and that's true, and that's another part of why I enjoy talking to comedians, because they do that. Their whole job is coming up with different thoughts. Like that, pretty much, that's what your art canvas is. It's just like, these are all the thoughts I thought this year. That's stand-up.
That's a good way of putting it, isn't it?
Or even better, these are the best thoughts that I thought, that I personally think I thought.
How egotistical is that?
It's pretty... Dude, there's no one
Pay to hear my thoughts.
And that's what it is. And usually, pay to hear my thoughts, which is usually just my life.
Oh, wow.
It's gross, isn't it? That's something that I'm constantly aware of in stand-up. I try and teach the audience something, because I don't want to waste their time of just being like... Yeah, I had a fight with my girlfriend and I think I'm right in this situation. What a twist. Oh, I thought I was right. It's stupid. But, I think that...
Wait, hang on. You're just saying stand-up is stupid?
In general, man, don't you? Don't you think that a lot of it is... I think that, in general, all art is pretty crap.
All right, all right, all right. So when you say stupid, do you think it's? What do you mean by that? Stand up is stupid.
I think it's a waste of time. I think it's not particularly creative. A lot of the stand-up sets that I see, I'm just like, you're
Okay,
just
okay, so
any
you're saying-
fuck at
are you
Melbourne
saying
International Comedy Festival.
Are you saying a lot of stand up is crap, but there is some really good stand up out there, or do you think
Yeah.
stand up in general is stupid?
I think that stand-up is actually, and I do not regard myself as even fucking close to like one of the greats or whatever, but I think that in general, stand-up is the hardest to be best at, because what are you doing? You're just having a chat. Everybody has a chat. So you have to be really good at having a chat.
Yeah.
Don't you reckon?
There's
So-
nothing you can depend upon, especially if you're at an open mic. I just remember seeing those open mics where it would be a bunch of miscellaneous artistic acts. There'd be a musician, then there'd be a singer, and then there'd be a stand-up. And you observed it and you saw that the stand-up had to just rely on the quality of their thoughts and their ideas. Whereas the singer could still have the rhythm and the tone and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
But
That's exactly
the
it.
stand-up, it completely it's just you and the mic.
That's it. So it's like, if you are good at stand-up, and first off, I do agree that most people that it takes like 30 years to be good at stand-up. But if you are very good at stand-up, it is an impressive trait. It's an impressive skill, because like you're just relying on one thing. You've got just your thoughts in front of you. All of that is very impressive. Having said that, I think it has the strongest miss rate. And man, you can look at Netflix. I don't think I've laughed at any
Okay,
of it.
I agree with you there that it's the hardest to get right.
It's the hardest to get right.
Bad stand-up is horrifically awkward to
Yeah.
watch.
Even if you watch a mediocre band.
But I thought you
can't
were
just
saying
groove on.
stand-up in general is stupid. The art itself.
Oh, the art itself. No.
Okay.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
But I will say that I think it's a lower art than other art forms. So, for instance, I think that like dance and music is higher up on the creative spectrum than stand-up would be.
Why is that?
Because it's just, dude, how do you tell a story with your fucking body? Like with no words at all. You just go out there and you're just like, yep, this is the Russian Revolution. It's like, what?
That's great. Right? It's your inner creativity coming out. You should be a choreographer.
Oh, no, I should not. I am the most unco cunt you will ever meet in your life. I have no control over my body at all. And you can tell now, can't you? But yeah, I think that if you're going to go down in terms of creativity, stand-up would be a lot lower down. Because, yes, you're coming up with new thoughts, but you at least are able to articulate them. You can convey
Okay.
what you're thinking to other people.
Yeah.
That is really difficult to do in music and dance successfully. And it's also, this is the other thing as well, man. Like the
But you don't have that backup. Because with music and dance, you can be an average singer, for example. And you're not illustrating anything amazing, nothing groundbreaking, nothing new. But people would still be like, that's good. That's decent.
Yeah.
That had a
Yeah.
rhythm to it, that had a flow. Whereas if you're an average stand-up, that's just like we said, that's extremely awkward to watch.
Yeah.
You have to be good at it. The stakes are a lot higher.
Yeah. That's it. So I think it requires a lot more skill for you to be passable in stand-up. And
But I suppose the discipline involved, I wouldn't know. I've never tried doing ballet or singing. But I suppose
God,
the
I would
discipline
love
in
to see that. But anyway,
should,
keep
yeah.
going.
The discipline involved in being championing that art would be incredible.
Of course.
They're there, hours a day just perfecting the pirouette or whatever. I don't know what it is, but they'll break their toes,
Yeah,
don't
whatever
they?
that triangle thing is. But that's it. Honestly, and I saw it all the time. The dancers at my school that actually went on to become, the people that were just in like the London Ballet Society and all those kind of things. The ones that became successful at it, and even then, this is the other thing that's really sad as well. Honestly, people always complain. I hate this thing of people be like, "Comedy's the hardest job in the world." How fucking self-absorbed do you have to be? Like, that's harder than fucking being a child soldier digging up diamonds, is it? Like, it's nowhere fucking
Who says
close.
that? Who says comedy is the hardest job in the world?
Haven't you heard that? Maybe it's not as prominent as what I thought it is. Anyway, moving on.
Never heard anyone say that.
But the thing is, at the end of the day,
All I ever hear is people coming up to me and being like, "Oh, I could never do what you do."
yeah, that's true.
That's crazy. Getting up in front of people, making them laugh.
And a lot of the time, those people are funnier. But that's the art of it, I guess, is that
Yeah,
you put them on stage and they're not.
Exactly, and that's where the actual art comes from. Being
that's
a
the
funny
act.
person in a social situation is incredibly different to being funny on stage
Yes.
and presenting funny thoughts in a unique way. Because in fact, I think there's actually a correlation between people who are not that funny in person, or just rather meek and keep to themselves in person, and they're the ones who are good stand-ups.
Because they're introverted.
They're observant.
And they're willing to be by themselves for a long time, that's a huge component of being a good comedian. Just being an uber loner. You have to spend heaps of time by yourself.
Yeah.
But that is the difference between someone who's funny and not, because the funny person is actually an extrovert, and the comedian is usually an introvert.
That's true. So let's just go back to what you were saying before, which is you think everyone would be better at their job if they were more creative. How do you improve your creativity? Because just off the top of my head, it would almost be like unlearning the techniques that you employ to improve any other academic skill. Because if you want to get better at mathematics, for example, it's all about practice, it's all about discipline. Whereas to improve your creativity, I can only assume you have to actually think outside of the box and not be restricted by any sort of objective rules. So how do you do it?
And that's the personality type. That's the really scary part about this, is kind of just some people don't like thinking outside the box. I remember that.
But how do you then, so you're saying you want to improve your creativity. Are there techniques you can do to do that?
Yeah. First of all, the use one. And it actually does. Look, I will give you this. If you are disciplined enough to sit there with a pen and paper and write down a lot of stuff, you will be sitting there and you'll just be like, oh yeah, this is the fucking sweetest joke ever. And look, none of them will be. I mean, sorry, fuck, all of them will be. But 2 of those thoughts will be really funny. In fact, I think in the last 2 stand-up shows that I did, the 2 biggest jokes in those entire stand-up things were from me being stoned with my friends when I was 19. And I just still had it in notes. I was like, damn, that's fucking hilarious. And you put it in. But a lot of those thoughts are going to be crap. But that's the first thing that you have to be, is just very, very, very comfortable with failure. So for instance, I think it was Beethoven and Mozart, both of them, the reason that they're famous now and the reason that their works are so respected, basically they just did 10 times more work than their contemporaries. They released 10 times more symphonies. So a lot of those symphonies no one knows. And it's the same with all these other guys. Some of them actually did write really good symphonies. Some, if you're a scholarly musicologist or whatever, you'd probably say that, there's artists from that time that wrote better stuff. But they didn't write as much stuff. So they didn't have as much chance of being remembered, and a lot of their crap was just awful. But the thing is, they were just in that mind of just constantly processing things. And I think that's the same thing as, like, first off, if you're doing anything creative, the thing that you always have to fight is, God, what was this book in? The War of Art, I think. In The War of Art, they were just saying that you have to constantly fight against resistance. And the people that are most creative are the people that don't have to fight resistance as much. As in, this idea is shit. I can't think of anything. I'm not in the mood at the moment. The people that are most creative are the ones that are just like, I can't think of anything. Well, I'm just going to write down exactly what I think at this moment. And eventually what starts happening, if you do that, I don't know if you've ever done this before, but you know what? You can go insane doing this. There was this guy, I think his name was Jed McKenna. He came up with this thing called like a spiritual autolysis. And I think even Jordan Peterson talks about this as well. But essentially, if you just sit there and you
Yeah.
write down for just day in, day out, you just keep writing, eventually what happens is your subconscious kicks in and you just start writing, and then you read things and you go, Jesus, that's pretty dark, or damn, like I didn't even know I knew that, or that's a very funny thought, or that's a scary thought. Oh, sorry, that's a scary thought. But all these things come to fruition, and eventually you start going a bit mad because you also start realizing that
Have you done that?
most of the things. Yeah, but then after a while, it started freaking me out, and I stopped. I
How long-
don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
How long were you writing for?
You know what? I think there was a good period of my life for maybe 3 to 4 months where I was just writing for
Oh,
about
so,
2 hours a day.
So you're not talking about one continuous session of non-stop writing. You're just talking about consuming most of the day with writing, but still taking food breaks and things like
Well, that's what those people would do if they really want to go.
that. It's nothing. So they'd eat and drink, but they'd just be writing.
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, people always say that that's the ultimate spiritual enlightenment, and it kind of makes, because what's the definition of enlightenment? Truth. And those people just sit there with one question at the top, which is just, what do you know for sure? And is a very scary thought to face, because actually you don't know much. And it becomes really clear the deeper you go into it. So you're basically just deprogramming yourself. That's how it works.
Wow.
But anyway, somebody who is creative usually is somebody who's not afraid to go to those places. The less fear they have of going there,
Okay.
the less fear they have of structure, not being structured.
Yeah.
They like being in a kind of chaotic mind frame. It's again this thought of just like, it could be anything.
It's a rebellious mindset.
Yeah, rebellious mindset. And this word keeps coming up over and over again when you read about creativity. Openness. So that's why I'm saying about the fucking, who's landed it anyway, improv and stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, you're not going to get laid at the time, but you will get laid later on.
And that's what it all comes down to. We've come full
As
circle.
always. Can we ever
This
escape
podcast
this?
is just how to get laid. Be creative.
Just non-stop theories about how to get laid, but not that much evidence to back it up.
I think what it is the sort of men in particular that are attracted to improv. And look, this is coming from a guy who was very attracted to improv. Are the sort of guys who can't excel in other areas of traditionally masculine domains, for example. They're not good at sport, or they're not particularly aggressive, or good at other areas of life that are traditionally where men can, find some value. So they go to improv. So that's
You're
why
probably right, man.
it then takes a long time for them to use those skills to then get themselves laid. Because they have to overcome the fact that they're already at the bottom of the pecking order. But if they then can find a way to get to the top of the pecking order, those skills would come in handy.
That's what I think. Because
Okay, I
it's
agree
about
with you. I agree
making
with you
yourself open. That's all improv is. Improv is that idea of it could be anything. I remember there was this thing on who's the best. It was some documentary I was watching ages ago, or a TV show, I don't know. But it was who's the most creative, and they had like a chess player, they had a musician, a dancer, they had some literary expert, they had a physicist, and it just came out with every single field. The physicist knocked it out of the park.
Really?
Everything. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Like, if the smartest people on Earth, you can imagine just sitting there in a laboratory all fucking day, just like scribbling away at a chalkboard. Equations, right? But the thing is that he was saying at the end of it, he was going, of course I was going to be the biggest genius. My job is to sit there, those impossibles, those puzzles that you can get and they don't have any edges, and it's just like a picture of a million golf balls, and they go, there you go. And it's fucking impossible to finish that.
Yeah.
But he was just basically saying that mine is just an infinitely harder impossible. Like, you're looking at the universe every day and going, this doesn't make sense at all. And you have to try and figure out something that you will never figure out in your lifetime. Never. Not in 100 generations will we know anything about the universe, like coming even close to it. Yeah. Maybe even invent AI or something, I don't know. But just with the human mind, it's impossible. So just taking on that challenge every day of trying to solve this unbelievably complex puzzle is going to make you smart in every field. And so
Never thought of it like that.
the thing that
Wow.
he kept going to, and he was saying
Just
the
the
same
starting point would take creativity. Where do I
Exactly.
start?
Where do you start?
Yeah.
And so he's doing the creative thing, and he wins it outright because they just go, make a painting, make the most different painting from everybody else, and you'll figure out that you're the most creative. Anyway, so everybody's just painting away and stuff, and actually it just comes down to really everybody was just doing an extension of themselves. Like the violin player was making a violin, ooh, creative. But then everybody determined, because this guy just put his ass cheeks in paint and then just started going on the ground in different colours. And it was easily the most different out of all of them. It was just random. It was just absurd, bizarre. And
Okay.
no one would have thought of that.
But is being different just does that always indicate creativity?
No. But it does, it's close. It's close to that. So if you are different, you could just be crazy. But you could also be eccentric. That's pretty much the difference. If you're eccentric, your ideas have some merit.
Sure.
If you're crazy, they don't. But he was coming back to this point that if you're creative, anything that you do, like you realize that the answer is it could be anything. And the more you understand that idea, I think the more creative you are.
Okay.
Like the answer could be anything where you least suspect it.
Okay.
That's something that you need to get into. And then the other thing, of course, is just going into, working intensely for a long period of time, then taking a break, going for a walk, watering your plants, doing something completely different.
Right.
And then your subconscious sets in, works on that problem, you come back, and then you'll see that you just go, oh, shit. A lot of those problems will be solved. These are all techniques.
Because I haven't researched this topic as thoroughly as you have, clearly. But,
Or at all.
yeah, really, to be honest. But I have come across the idea that simply by virtue of being different or presenting something different, you have artistic merit or you are automatically creative. I don't know if I always agree with that, man, because there are particularly, again, I take it back to my own experiences in comedy. There are comedians who are clearly just trying to do something that isn't bound by the normal structures of how to write a punchline and how to present a joke. And they're lauded as these creative geniuses because, I
I know, I hate
by
that.
specifically not being funny, they're
Yes.
somehow being funny because they've just taken apart what normal comedy is, and they've somehow like dissected it. And I don't know, maybe I'm just not on their level of genius.
No,
I just
you're
don't
not,
see
dude.
it.
They're just going down that road of the shittest fucking... Like, it's a really bastardized version of what creativity is, which is just the idea of postmodernism. And they always think they're the first person to think of it. It's just like,
Right.
dude, it's not the 30s. You're not the first person to think of this.
Sure.
But...
So then how do you judge that? Because, again, I don't know what this book is or where you've found this experiment, but hearing that this guy's, put paint on his butt cheeks or whatever and just jumped around on the painting, is that... So what were they judging in terms of the creativity
They
there?
were just judging
They were just saying
how different it is from everyone else's idea. So,
Right.
look, yeah, and also on top of that, when you say that, I hate that just as much as you do. And I'll just add this to it. The thing is that's so annoying about that is it's not original. When people are being like crazy and absurd and weird, like a lot of the things that they're saying, you think, if I was going to be crazy and absurd and weird, I would have said that
Exactly.
in that scenario. You know what? Actually, this is going to get me a lot of hate, but I don't give a fuck. Mighty Boosh fucking shits me to death. That is not creative. Sorry. It's so always this fucking thing of just being like, it was kooky and weird. But again, it's that same thought of if you wanted to be kooky and weird, you would come up with the Mighty Boosh. It's not different in that kind of a way. But yes, again, difference and having it being applicable is something that's also like, that's the other half of it. The thing is that if you're going to do something that's creative, often what you want is to have boundaries put on you. And that's where that openness comes in, because you figure out how to get around the boundary in a way that still works within the rules.
Sure.
And the example that I always use of that is Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy was really funny and weird and scary as a kid's show. But then they made adult Ren and Stimpy. And so then there was just no rules whatsoever that they couldn't break or find other ways around. So when they were doing a kid's version of Ren and Stimpy, he'd sit there and then just fantasize about how he was going to torture Rin would sit there and fantasize about how he was going to torture Stimpy.
Yeah,
And
sure.
it became way scarier and intense as a result of that. But in the adult version of that, he would have just done what they've done in Inchy and Scratchy or something like that. Just pulled out his eyes, used his carcass as a bagpipe, whatever. But
Yeah.
the thing is that because there was no rules that they were breaking,
Yeah.
that they were, but still like acceptable within that framework, acceptable enough, it just wasn't as good. And you can say the same thing with Howard Stern.
Sure.
Howard Stern's show was a lot better when it was networked than when he
Yeah.
went on to satellite radio, where he could just say whatever he wanted. But the thing is that there's that mind that is capable of saying that whatever he wants thing, but there's also that thing of like, you have to do it within this parameter. And I find that's very...
Okay, I agree with you there, man.
Don't you think?
Yeah, because that conflict is where the creativity comes about.
Yep. Exactly. You're trying to figure out a way to solve a problem. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, I want to show Stimpy getting tortured, but I can't. How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
That's creative. It
Absolutely.
forces you to think
Okay.
differently.
Yeah.
And it's also another reason that I think that, to my great detriment, I hate it when, I don't like now that I'm in a part of my career where I've got more money. And I think that that's one of the truest things that's ever been said on creativity,
This
is
is
that
a
money kills
subtle
art.
brag.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but yes.
Get some cash.
Yes, it is. Yeah, check it
Patreon's
out.
going well.
Kmart money. But the thing is that, well, like I'm not a millionaire or whatever, but I'm making enough money to live, which is what most creative people would kill for. It's like very rarely that happens.
Sure.
And you make a lot of compromises with that. But the thing is that I don't like that I have the ability now, if I wanted to just get a bunch of, animal suits and a jumping castle and all these kind of things. Like, that you could afford all of these high budget things.
Do you think it's just the money component and the ability to live comfortably, or do you think it's adversity that creates good, that pushes the artist and the creator to create the best art?
Yeah,
So you can
adversity
still,
is another word for boundaries, right?
yeah. So you can still have the money and be rich, but if you've got that personal turmoil, for example, many of the great artists, they achieved their fortune, but then they still kept producing great art, was because they always had that personal turmoil.
Yep. That's exactly it. This is what you'll
So
see
again,
over
you
and
also
over.
just need the personal turmoil, like me.
You need it.
Yeah.
Or at least, let's just redefine it. You don't need turmoil. You need boundaries.
We need to abuse each other when we least expect
Yes,
it.
that's... Oh, my God.
All right,
I'd be pretty happy with that if you just ran
That's a
into my
deal.
house and stabbed me in the leg every now and then and ran out.
Likewise.
Thanks, Neel.
Likewise.
Hey, I think, look, because the thing is, someone who I actually do think is a creative genius, and everyone will like roll their eyes. She's not as much as one of the, say, Michael Jackson is, but who is? But she is probably, when people like, dude, it was so sad watching Usher say, "I think I'm this generation's Michael Jackson." No, sweetheart, sorry. The one that maybe
I know,
is,
Confessions was a pretty good song.
yeah, and who could forget Sweatsuit?
That was
no,
Nelly.
does.
Oh, bringing out the casual racism.
Yeah, I know.
Mixing up the early 2000s. It's not even in the same genre. Nelly's hip hop.
Is he?
R&B. Yeah.
Fuck.
I mean, Nelly crossed
that
over
whole
into
area
R&B,
is
but I'd call him hip hop.
Man, that is a blur, that whole generation of shit to be now.
It's a
just
blur,
like-
but it was also the greatest.
Oh, there's no
Greatest
denying
generation
that.
of music of
Yeah.
all time.
Yeah, music died when Ja Rule stepped out, I'll tell you that.
Literally. I'm not even joking. For me, that was the greatest era of music.
So what
Shows
is
how
it,
much I know about
2002?
creativity.
Yeah.
Well, it's 60s rock. No, man, nah. 2000s rap. That's where it's at.
Yeah. Just when Garage Band was invented and they didn't get pretentious.
John Lennon. Nah, bruh. Ja Rule. The poor man's John Lennon.
Oh, damn, dude. It just seems so wrong to even say that, doesn't it? To even give him that.
I don't know. It feels pretty good to me. Feels right.
That album cover. Fuck. I remember even as a kid just going, nah, this is pushing it.
Okay, but so who's this generation's creative genius then, you were going to say?
Well, in terms of music pop, obviously when it comes to other creative fields of music, so for instance, classical music or whatever, there's going to be people that are way more musically proficient. But
Sure.
it is apparent to me that at least Lady Gaga makes different pop music, as in it's popular, it hits top 40 a lot, but she kind of breaks boundaries and kind of becomes the first wave of what is then borrowed off of from other female singing artists. And she was saying that even though she is a multi-millionaire at this point, when she's writing an album, she stays in a room that is completely white with a mattress and a notepad. And it's that same thing of just you don't want to be surrounded by distractions and the idea of just being like,
Okay.
you're great already. And
So how do you objectively define the creativity there? Do you from what you said before, which is the fact that she creates new trends and new sounds that then other artists attach themselves to and use? Is that the measure?
wouldn't you say that's a good one? A
I'd say that,
trendsetter?
yeah, I'd say that. But then again, it might just be me and the way that my mind just can't comprehend these grand artistic ideas. But I see Lady Gaga a lot, and I'm just like, that's just weird. Like, what's she doing? I don't understand. I don't particularly. How do you define it? How do you differentiate weird from genius? That's what I want to know.
And that's
Because I clearly can't.
well, neither can I. No one can.
Okay.
And that's the whole thing about genius is that it takes sometimes generations for society to catch up. You know, the classic example is Van Gogh, that he just died selling one painting. And then like 100 years later, everyone went, holy shit, what the fuck were we thinking? This is so much better than really nice bowls of fruit.
Yeah.
And it's that idea that a lot of the things that people see now, they're just going to dismiss that person as a crackpot and a weirdo. And 100 years from now, when society catches up and critics critique it, they're just going to go, yeah, that person was actually good. But I think
And when they say that, when the critics say that person was actually good, what are they taking into account?
they're taking into account, first of all, were they ahead of their time? Were they trend setting in a way? Because that's the whole thing. Look, I don't know anything
Okay.
about art history. I'm completely stupid about it. And frankly, I'm glad. I'm just not that much
I'm
a fan of paintings.
More ignorant than you are. Clearly.
of my mouth.
Yeah.
But the what they're looking for is somebody who started up a completely new style of painting, which is why this is
Okay.
I hate modern art like most people do, but I do understand that it's very hard. Like, where the fuck do you go from now? Like,
Yeah.
okay, everyone agrees Renaissance painting's awesome, but it's been done.
Yeah.
To push the boundaries of thought, you need to come up with something new. And so when someone goes like, it's a crinkly bed, and they get 50 grand,
Yeah.
I think that's a huge waste of taxpayer money. I
For a
hate the
while.
fact that I have to pay for that.
Sure.
But
After all, it becomes that bastardized version that we were talking about, which is the fact that it's considered great just simply by virtue of being different, isn't it?
it's not good enough. You're right. No, it has to have some practicality and some meaning to it. So, for instance, Edward Munch, I think his name was, the guy that made The Scream, he was the first person to paint emotions. So instead of just painting some muscly cunt and then just putting a fig leaf over his cock, he just went, no, I just want to paint despair. And that's how he came up with The Scream. Just that picture being like, nah. He was the first dude to do it.
Okay.
So that's how you see somebody as being
Yeah.
creative, is kind of just like pushing the trend forward in a way that is useful for the rest of society. I think would be the best way that you could describe someone who's creative. And something that people always say as well is that creative geniuses and entrepreneurs are pretty closely knit. Because again, they're going into the realm of what isn't there yet and bringing it into reality, which is, not many people do that. A lot of people just follow the rules. And so that's why I honestly think that the world would be a better place if people kind of just honed their creativity in some way
Yeah.
and thought about it in a different way. Because otherwise, dude, society just keeps running on the same wheel.
Do you think there are certain people in society though, that if they have particular jobs, they don't, there's no real need for them to be creative.
Yeah, like an accountant.
Yeah, people who just need to do the same task each
Because
day.
they're just basically a calculator.
How's the creativity gonna help them?
I mean, look, not everyone has to be, but more people should be. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
And even somebody who, for instance, like how I was saying before, that lawyers aren't creative.
The best lawyers
Some,
probably are creative.
Yes.
No, the
And
best
they're
lawyers
usually
would be
fucked.
creative.
But yeah, they're usually the guy that got OJ off and stuff. But,
Sure. Great lawyer.
But great lawyer,
Gave
man.
us Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, dude. Fuck. I mean, yeah, when God closes a window.
Because it takes it's a creative skill to, take from these infinite words and then process them in a way that is the most effective at getting across your particular argument. There are definitely going to be people who are better at that than others.
That's a huge part of it. But the other thing is being able to interpret the law and make it apply to your client. If you're at the top of your game,
Yeah.
you would have to be very creative with the law. And so actually, it's that same thing of just, I mean, that is the ultimate game, isn't it? Because that is just rules. It's just this encyclopedia of rules, and it's saying be creative using this encyclopedia of rules.
Yeah, wow.
So yes, there is examples of, and again, you will see that over and over, that the people that are at the top of their field in law usually are creative. But there are a lot of people in law that just follow the rules exactly.
Are they tortured in the same way artists are? The great lawyers?
I've met, God, now I can't even remember his name. Is it Justice Kirby? I can't even, yeah, it is Justice Kirby.
Everyone at the top of their field has some kind of drug problem, it seems.
Well, that's the first thing that I saw when I thought him. I was just like, yep, coke. But after that, he's just got very eccentric hair. Or did. I don't even know if he's got it anymore. This was years ago. And the way that he moved and the way that he spoke, it was kind of Mick Jagger-esque. And then you look at what he has done to the Australian legal system. He's made huge reforms. None which cross my mind at the moment, but he is constantly being brought up over and over again in law books.
Right.
Of being, he interpreted the law this way. There is definitely a streak of creativity in that man.
Interesting.
So I think that's it, man. I think it's just about being open to more thoughts, not being restricted by thoughts.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I think as well, is just like creative people, if you see them, it's always the same with politics and stuff like that. It's just like, if somebody is just like, this is the way I think about the world, any other idea sucks. But then you see that a lot of artists that I know that I think personally are like the real artists and stuff, they'll just be like, yeah, Gavin McInnes is mad, Kyle Kalinski's awesome, Noam Chomsky's sick. They like having different thoughts in their head.
Sure.
And they don't care where those thoughts come from, or even if they're right.
Sure.
They just like thinking about stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right,
we've probably gone over
that's
time.
a good.
Yeah.
That's a good time to wrap things up. That was
All right.
very informative and educational for me in particular. You definitely spoke for about 90% of that podcast.
We'll talk about
Well,
something
I was
you know
just
a lot
taking
about.
in the thoughts because I'm the creative here.
Yeah.